In 1857, a man named Henry Rawlinson stood inside the British Museum in London and placed 3 clay tablets on a table. They had been pulled from the ruins of ancient Nineveh in modern-day Iraq. The cuneiform script on their surface had taken years to decode. When Rawlinson and his colleagues finally translated the Akkadian text, they found something that did not match any known religious tradition. The tablets described a divine assembly, a council of gods debating what to do about humanity. Not because humans had sinned, not because they had worshipped the wrong deity. The gods were afraid of what humans were becoming, afraid of what humans were learning to build. And on those tablets, the assembly reached a verdict. Total erasure, not punishment, annihilation. Those tablets are still in the British Museum. They are catalogued, published, and translated. Scholars have studied them for over 150 years, and the warning carved into their surface has never been retracted. The tablets in question belong to a text known as the Atrahasis epic. 3 tablets of Old Babylonian cuneiform, dating to roughly 1700 years before the Common Era. The critical editions were published by W.G. Lambert and A.R. Millard through Oxford in 1969. The tablets are registered at the British Museum under accession numbers BM 78000, 941 through 43. This is not obscure material. It is one of the most studied Akkadian compositions in existence. And what it describes is a story that most people have never heard told in full. The Atrahasis opens before humanity exists. The cosmos is already populated. A race of divine beings called the Anunnaki sit at the top of the hierarchy. Below them, a labor class of gods called the Igigi perform the physical work of maintaining creation. They dig canals, they dredge rivers, they haul earth, they build the infrastructure of the world. And they do this for 3,600 years. The text gives that number explicitly. 36 centuries of forced labor. The conditions described are not abstract. The Igigi carry baskets of soil on their backs. They wade through marshland. They cut channels through hard clay under a sky that offers no relief. The text says they counted their years of labor. They measured their suffering in time. Then the Igigi break. They burn their tools. They surround the dwelling of Enlil, chief of the divine assembly, in the middle of the night. The scene reads like a siege. Armed gods surrounding a palace. Torches in the dark. Enlil wakes in terror and demands to know who leads the rebellion. But there is no leader. The entire labor force has turned at once. The assembly convenes. Enlil wants retribution. But Ea, the god of wisdom and water, proposes an alternative. Do not punish the rebels. Replace them. Create a new species, a being mixed from divine blood and earth and clay, strong enough to dig, obedient enough to serve, disposable enough to destroy if necessary. The assembly agrees. A god named Wyler is selected. The text calls him the one who had intelligence. He is slaughtered. His blood is drained and mixed with clay by the birth goddess Nintu. From this mixture, 14 pieces are pinched off. 7 male, 7 female. Humanity is born. And the purpose of that birth is stated with uncomfortable clarity. The text says, "Let the human bear the yoke. Let the human carry the workload of the gods." Humanity was not created to worship. Humanity was created to work. This was the contract. This was the boundary. Humans dig. Humans build temples. Humans plant grain and offer sacrifice. They do not innovate. They do not reach beyond what the gods permit. And for a time, this arrangement held. But the tablets record what the gods did not anticipate. The Sumerians catalogued something called the ME. These were divine powers, cosmic authorities, civilizational technologies, not metaphors, not abstractions. The texts list over 100 of them by name. Kingship was a ME. Priesthood was a ME. The craft of metalworking, the art of writing, the practice of law, the knowledge of irrigation, the understanding of musical instruments. Each was considered a divine possession, held by the gods and dispensed to humanity only in controlled portions. Samuel Noah Kramer of the University of Pennsylvania translated a Sumerian composition known as Inanna and Enki, in which the goddess Inanna travels to the city of Eridu and gets the god Enki drunk. While he is incapacitated, she steals over 100 ME and loads them onto her boat. When Enki sobers up, he sends monsters to retrieve them. He sends wave after wave of creatures to stop her boat before it reaches her city of Uruk. The panic in the text is not subtle. A god losing control of the ME was treated as a cosmic emergency. If even one deity possessing these powers without authorization caused that level of alarm, imagine what it meant when humans began developing them on their own. And they did. The city of Uruk in southern Mesopotamia reached a population of over 40,000 people by 3,200 years before the Common Era. Its walls stretched for 9 kilometers. The Epic of Gilgamesh itself opens by praising those walls, describing their construction as one of the great achievements of human civilization. Thorkild Jacobson of Yale documented irrigation networks across southern Iraq that spanned hundreds of kilometers, engineered systems that redirected entire rivers to feed fields that sustained tens of thousands of families. These were not crude ditches scratched into mud. They were graded channels with calculated slopes, overflow basins, and distribution gates that could feed water to dozens of separate field systems from a single canal. Humans invented writing, not for poetry, for accounting, for tracking grain surplus and labor allocation. They developed a base 60 mathematical systems so precise that we still use it today in our clocks and our geometry. They mapped the stars with enough accuracy to predict eclipses. They wrote legal codes. The laws of Ur-Nammu, dating to roughly 2100 before the Common Era, predate the famous Code of Hammurabi by 3 centuries. This was not slow, passive development. This was acceleration. And within the framework of the Atrahasis, none of it was authorized. The Atrahasis uses a single word to describe what happened next. Rigmu. The standard translation is noise. Humanity grew numerous and their noise disturbed Enlil. He could not sleep. Most scholars interpret this as a complaint about overpopulation. Jean Bottero of the École Pratique des Hautes Études in Paris read it as cultic noise, the clamor of too many human rituals. But the sequence of events in the text suggests something larger. Enlil responds to the noise with plague. Humanity suffers, but survives. He sends drought. Humanity adapts and endures. He sends famine. Humanity finds ways to persist. Each time, the noise returns. Each time, it is louder. This is not a story about volume. This is a story about a species that refuses to be reduced, a species that absorbs every punishment and comes back stronger. The Rigmu is not sound. The Rigmu is progress, and progress was never part of the design. Then comes the tower. The ziggurat of Etemenanke stood in the sacred precinct of Babylon. The Esagila tablet, held in the Louvre in Paris under accession number AO 6555, records its dimensions. A base of approximately 90 meters on each side. A structure intended to reach from Earth to the realm of the gods. Robert Koldewey excavated its foundation between 1899 and 1917 and confirmed the scale. The Tower of Babel Stele, held in the Schoyen collection in Oslo under catalogue number MS 2063, shows the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II standing beside the completed structure. He is depicted pointing upward toward the unfinished summit, a king measuring his ambition against the sky. The biblical account in Genesis chapter 11 draws on these older Mesopotamian traditions, and the divine reaction it preserves is extraordinary. The text states that the gods looked down and saw that humanity was one people with one language, and that nothing they proposed to do would now be impossible for them. Read that again. The gods did not say humans had built something offensive. They said humans had reached a point where no future achievement could be prevented. The tower was not the crime. The tower was the proof of concept. The real threat was everything that would come after. And the divine response was immediate. Shatter their language, scatter them across the earth, break the unity that made the tower possible. This was not punishment for arrogance. This was strategic disruption of a species approaching a capability threshold the gods could not tolerate. The tablets show one more attempt. A man named Adapa, priest of Ea in the city of Eridu, was summoned to appear before Anu, the supreme god, in heaven itself. Fragments of this text were found at Tel El Amarna in Egypt, dating to the 14th century before the Common Era. Additional fragments came from Ashurbanipal's library in Nineveh. Adapa stood before the throne of heaven. He was offered the bread of life and the water of life. If he had consumed them, he would have become immortal. A human, standing among the gods, offered the one thing that separated the species, and Ea had already ensured it would not happen. Before Adapa left for heaven, Ea warned him not to eat or drink anything offered by Anu. The standard reading says Ea was protecting his servant from poison. But within the pattern these texts establish, the reading shifts. Ea was protecting the boundary. A human achieving immortality would collapse the entire divine hierarchy. Ea did not warn Adapa out of kindness. He sabotaged the one chance a human ever had to cross the final threshold. Adapa returned to Eridu. He lived out a mortal life. He died like every human before and after him, and the gate to immortality closed behind him permanently. 3 times, humanity approached or crossed the line. 3 times, the gods intervened. But the tablets record a 4th response, and this time, intervention was not enough. The Atrahasis, Tablet 3. Enlil convenes the divine assembly for the final time. He has tried plague. He has tried drought. He has tried famine. Humanity has survived everything. The noise has not stopped. It has grown. Enlil proposes the flood, not a local inundation, total annihilation. The assembly votes. The gods swear an oath. Humanity must not be warned. The language in Lambert and Millard's translation is procedural, clinical. This is not a scene of divine wrath. This is a boardroom voting to terminate a failed containment protocol. The species built to serve has become the species that cannot be stopped. The flood is not anger. The flood is policy. Ea, bound by the oath, finds a technical workaround. He does not warn the human Utnapishtim directly. He speaks to a reed wall. He tells the wall to tear itself down and build a boat. Utnapishtim, standing on the other side of the wall, hears everything. He builds the vessel. He loads his family, his craftsmen, and the animals aboard. The flood comes. The text in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Tablet 11, translated by Andrew George of the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, describes the storm in terms that read like an extinction event. The gods themselves cowered. They pressed against the walls of heaven like dogs. When the waters recede, Utnapishtim lands on a mountain. He makes a sacrifice. The gods, starving without human offerings, swarm to the smoke like flies. Enlil arrives last. He is furious. Someone broke the oath. Someone warned a human. Ea defends himself with the legal fiction of the reed wall. And then something happens that changes the entire story. The gods do not restart the program. They do not create a new servant species. They grant Utnapishtim immortality and banish him to the edge of the world. One human survived. One human was elevated. And the rest of humanity was allowed to begin again. But the terms changed. The Sumerian king list, preserved on the Weld Blundell Prism at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, records what came before and after the flood. Before, kings reigned for tens of thousands of years. The first king of Eridu ruled for 28,800 years, according to the Prism. The king who followed ruled for 36,000. These numbers do not correspond to any known human lifespan. After the flood, reigns dropped to human lifetimes. Whatever existed before the deluge, the scribes remembered it as something fundamentally different from what came after. The flood was not just a disaster. It was a dividing line between two versions of human civilization. One was erased, the other was permitted to continue under new constraints. The archaeological record offers one physical anchor for this memory. At the ancient site of Shurupak, modern Tel Farah in southern Iraq, excavations led by Eric Schmidt of the University of Pennsylvania in 1931 uncovered a distinct layer of water-deposited silt. Shurupak is the city that Sumerian tradition identifies as the home of the flood hero. Whether this silt layer corresponds to the mythological deluge is debated among geologists and archaeologists. That it exists precisely at the site the texts name is a coincidence that resists easy dismissal. And the pattern did not end there. The Era epic, composed by a scribe named Kabti Ilani Marduk in the 8th century before the Common Era, describes the god Era persuading Marduk to leave Babylon undefended. While Marduk is absent, Era unleashes destruction upon the city. Warriors cut down civilians in the streets. Temples are desecrated. The great walls are breached. The justification preserved in the text is that Babylon had grown too great. Its people had become too certain of their own power. They had forgotten that their prosperity existed at the discretion of the gods. Kabti Ilani Marduk claimed the entire text came to him in a dream, that the god dictated every line. Whether that claim is literal or literary, the message is consistent with everything the older texts describe. When human civilization reaches a certain threshold, correction follows. The form changes. Plague, flood, military destruction, linguistic fragmentation. But the principle remains the same across 1,000 years of cuneiform literature. The tablets do not name one specific forbidden structure. They describe something more comprehensive, a forbidden trajectory. Humans were not prohibited from building a wall or a temple or a tower. They were prohibited from building a civilization that no longer needed the gods. The irrigation networks that fed millions without divine rain. The astronomical knowledge that predicted the heavens without divine revelation. The legal codes that ordered society without divine decree. The mathematical systems that measured the cosmos without divine permission. Each advancement moved humanity one step closer to autonomy. And autonomy, within this textual tradition, is the one thing the gods could not allow. The me were meant to stay in divine hands. The yoke was meant to stay on human shoulders. Every text in the Mesopotamian corpus that addresses the relationship between gods and humans returns to this fundamental architecture: service below, authority above, and absolute consequences for any attempt to rearrange the order. The Atrahasis tablets are in the British Museum in London, room 55. Visitors walk past them every day. The Gilgamesh flood tablet sits in a climate-controlled case nearby. The Esagila tablet is in the Louvre in Paris. The Adapa fragments are split between the British Museum and the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The Weld Blundell prism is in the Ashmolean in Oxford. The Tower of Babel stele is in the Schoyen collection in Oslo. None of this is hidden. None of it is classified. The translations by Lambert, Millard, George, Daly, and Kramer are available in university libraries and bookstores worldwide. The cuneiform has been read. The words have been published. The warning has been in plain sight for over a century and a half. A species designed to carry the yoke. A species that put down the yoke, picked up a stylus, and started writing its own laws. A species that built towers toward heaven and mapped the stars without asking permission. The scribes who carved these tablets 3,700 years ago pressed the warning into clay, meant to outlast everything. The clay survived. The cities did not. The tablets are still here, still legible, still saying exactly what they said when the wet clay dried in the Mesopotamian sun. The gods held a council. They looked at what humanity was building, and they voted for erasure. That vote was recorded, it was never overturned, and the species it was meant to stop is still building.